Okay, so now we're going to discuss how the state transition happens at the directory side for GS320, the machine that has this network benefit, the network simplicity of global ordering in certain channels, channel 1, Q1 in particular, and that offers protocol simplicity. Before we even jump into this, we have to mention this, that really it wasn't all due to network ordering. Some of it is, but most of it is kind of a design decision issue, and that has to do with where these transitional states are being held. So if we really go back to this state, we see that because we have the three states, and only two of them are shown in here, right? We have these NAC situations. Okay, this is due to ordering. This NAC was due to ordering, and these NACs were due to having this busy state, and one of which is due to a completely different thing, that is allowing an uncached read. So really there were two conventional busy states, and we will see that they're actually being handled by sending to a different place, by kicking the kicking the can down the road. But nevertheless, there is no busy state at the coherence at the directory side. So if you have an unknown data and someone issues a read, very quickly you say, great, here's the data, and now it's shared, and you have it. Or perhaps this should be exclusive. I think this might be a typo. It's probably exclusive. It's unknown state, and you have a read. Boom, that goes to exclusive. If you're already in shared state, very easy. Record the presence bit in the sharing vector, supply the data, and this is the place where we had a busy state. And if you think about it, the data is in exclusive state. If someone does a read, we cannot transition to shared state instantly, because we need the data to be written back for us to have the up-to-date data. So how does the system solve this problem? GS320. It's not about it's not about ordering of the information. It actually takes time. It's not an atomic operation, because we cannot instantly obtain the data. So in reality, what they did is to have a dirty sharing, which we will see later, that even though the state is, in principle, you can do a strict transition going from exclusive to shared, it's not going to share. It's going to some sort of dirty sharing. Okay, so it's, in all honesty, they're not solving this problem. They're making this problem go away by pushing it to the node side. So the directory would go actually into some sort of DS state, a dirty shared state, okay, which means it's essentially exclusive, okay. It's essentially saying the original owner has the right data. So if there is another, if we're in a dirty shared state, there's another read, we will send it back. And when we really get the data written back from the owner, we will go back to conventional shared state, where we can supply the data from the directory side, from the memory side. Okay, so we'll get into that a little bit, but still, it's not a strictly speaking a busy state that we NAC other requests. Okay, so there is some benefit. Now, remember, this is the case. We're in unknown state, and we saw an update request, right? We were having this discussion that the reason this can happen is because of out of order delivery of message. And now that we have all the messages between two channels, the request, this is when I'm sending a request, I go through channel Q0 right here. It's not globally ordered, but it's point-to-point order. Okay, Q0 is point-to-point order, meaning between two nodes, messages cannot get out of order. So in this case, this is not possible anymore. For the same node to send two messages, one is a drop, the other is upgrade request, they will arrive in order, so we don't have to worry about unknown state getting an upgrade request. This is a real benefit, and thanks to the ordering property of the network. Next, if we are in shared state, how do we react to an upgrade request? Well, we have to keep this thing in the original, not in the original, in the DS, in the Origin 2000, we had the same problem. Do we go to some sort of busy state? Right? We can. We can go to busy state, wait until all the invalidations to be solved, and then transition to exclusive state. But even there, if you recall, we didn't do that. So there is this going on. There is this transitioning going on in the background, because we have to shoot down all the shared copy before we know that the write has been completed. But in terms of the directory's job, in terms of guaranteeing the order, we're done. So this is the same thing. We change to E, and we're done. Why? We know it's the current requester that wants to upgrade is going to be the next owner. He cannot declare the write complete at the moment. That needs to wait for the reply to happen. But we know that the next owner is going to be the current update requester. And there is another benefit, which we will show just a little bit in the timing diagram, that will allow us to bypass all this acknowledgement sent from the current owner. We'll see that in a little bit. So if we have a request that is an upgrade request to a piece of data that is already in exclusive state, then we need to change owner, right? Again, you have to think about this a little bit. It's already in exclusive, okay? I don't know if I can go back. Let's do a contrast over here. What happened here? The data is in exclusive and someone wants to upgrade. What is happening here? It's the race lost, meaning the upgrade must be coming from a node that has the shared state that is currently being invalidated. Okay? He hasn't heard. That node hasn't received the invalidation yet before it sent this request to upgrade. So it's lost race. All we have to do is to knock. Okay? In this case, this is the same idea. Can we have that situation in here? In principle, it's the same story. It's a race loss. It must be we change to exclusive very quickly. You see, if someone is in shared, we change that to exclusive very quickly, and we send the invalidation to the sharers. Maybe it hasn't arrived yet. And so we could knock it. We could say, hold on. you issue this before you saw my invalidation note. In a few minutes, you will see the invalidation note and then retry. Okay, but how does the retry happen? So that's in principle we can do that. It's request loss. The requester can retry later to say, oh, too bad, you told me to invalidate the message. All right, so I'll invalidate my cache line. I will invalidate my cache line, and later I will retry upgrading. Okay. In this case, this is an optimization. This isn't strictly speaking what they want to do. They don't want NAC. So they want to get rid of NAC, as you will see later. That is one of the things that they tout about the design decisions they made. So instead of NACing the result, all they're trying to do is to say, you're the next guy. Okay? Even though this is in exclusive state, you wanted to upgrade. If we NAC you and you're gonna try again, what happens? You're the next guy. So what they actually did is, again, this optimization called dirty sharing. What they do is to make the current exclusive owner be aware of this and transfer the ownership to the new partner. We'll see those two cases, this case and this case, in a timing diagram just shortly. Okay, all right. If we keep going, unknown state, if there's a readx, that's actually straightforward. We change to E, and we record the pointer to the owner, supply the data, pretty straightforward. And if it's already in shared, someone wants to read EX, it's really just copying the state over here with the exception that you reply with data. Okay, change to eat state, try to invalidate your sharers, and reply with data. It's that simple. And if it's read exclusive, and now we have a read EX, this is again very similar to the case above. So very similar to the case above. Okay, we need to send the data, and the old owner needs to become invalidated. So this is not called dirty sharing, but we will send the downgrade request to the current owner, ask him to send data, but meanwhile, just like in Origin 2000, we send speculative data reply. Finally, recall that even in the Origin 2000 case, we were debating about this. Is this possible? Yeah, even there, we realized that wasn't possible. Okay, so, and it's also not possible in the more restrictive network environment. Suppose it's in shared state, can we get a write back? Is it possible? It's in shared state, who's gonna write back? Well, in principle, it's not possible. But again, we have this dirty sharing that we will discuss a little bit more, right? So it's in shared state, but it's really dirty shared, okay? So this is possible because of the dirty shared. And if it is dirty shared, so it is really a different state, and the data came back, cool. We go back to regular conventional shared state. If it's really in your conventional shared state, this is not possible. You cannot have this happen, okay? So you see there's a bit of a cheat here. The dirty sharing really creates all these slight complication. They're just not called a transient state or busy state. It's called dirty sharing. It is a transient state. Finally, if it is an exclusive state, someone wants to write back, well, that's pretty straightforward. You write back, you acknowledge it, and you change the state to unknown. Now nobody has a copy in their cache. So let's look at the timing diagram, and this will show perhaps a bit better about these different transitions. So if you have a read, this is fairly straightforward. You always send through Q0, and you always get a reply in Q1. And the Q1 is globally ordered. This has some benefit. In the case of a simple 2-hop read, you request maybe it's in shared, maybe it's in unknown state. You get a reply, no big deal. The globally ordered Q1 has a benefit in this case. This would be, if we go back, we are in shared state. Okay, maybe I should clean this up. We're in shared state. And someone wants to upgrade. The directory will just change to exclusive state, and it will send invalidation to all the sharers, and it will simply reply with an ACT. And this is the key thing. So the reply, the invalidation, and the reply to the requester are all sending Q1. So in your old, not in your old, in your Origin 2000 system, we would be sending invalidation and tell R, you know, when you can assume everything is done, you wait for the acknowledgement from these nodes. Okay? When that happens, you know they eliminated all their copy, your write has been completed. In this case, by the time you received your reply from the home, from the directory, okay, you're done. You know that this is globally ordered. If this is done, anything that happens after which has to be ordered behind the invalidations, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. So that's nice. Okay, some simplification for this case. Okay. What about the next case, right? We deferred a little bit about this dirty sharing. Okay, it's in exclusive state, right? This is an exclusive state. Maybe we should start with this. Okay, so so we will look at the dirty sharing first. Okay, it's an exclusive state, and I have a read. How does that work? This is the current owner. So this is really just in exclusive state. The data is in exclusive state. And so the first transaction that happens was a read from the requester that arrives at the home. Home notice that and say, oh, it's an E state. So this is going to become dirty shared. What does dirty share mean? That's really another name of calling busy state. It's busy in that it hasn't gone back into shared state. The home doesn't have the correct data, the up-to-date data, but we know that it's no longer in exclusive state. So this guy cannot keep writing to it. It needs to relinquish the data. So what we do, number 2 transaction, is to send both the answer, and this is in Q1, the notification from the directory to the original owner. Please get down to shared state, and you need to forward data to him, and this comes afterwards, after obviously receiving the message too. But for the requester, we send a marker. This is actually very interesting. When we send a marker, we're telling it, I don't have the data for you. I can send you speculative data. Okay. This is again optimization. I can send you speculative data, whatever I have in the in case the node, the owner, didn't touch it. But another interesting thing is really, by the time you received my marker, it's done. Globally, that's you can finish. You can even consider the read to be globally performed. It's actually fairly interesting. You don't have the data, but you can say it's done. In any case, the data will come later. This is in Q2. It's not being ordered. It can arrive much later. Doesn't really matter. But the directory knows that it's in shared state. Okay, it's in dirty shared state. And who is the dirty sharer? you actually still have to remember to point to the current owner, because I don't have the data. The directory doesn't have the data. The dirty sharer has the data. So if there's another read that comes along, next time, I still have to do this. I still have to do this whole operation, which is I'm forwarding. You give me a request, you ask for data. Even though I now may be in dirty shared state, I still remember who has the data, who is the owner of it. Therefore, I have to forward it to the current owner to supply to you. Okay? Now, what if you're in exclusive state? The upgrade request arrives, meaning that not only do I want the data, I also want invalidation. Okay, I want you to give me the data, invalidate yourself, and because we could potentially be in a dirty shared state, there may be other sharers, and this is being shown in here, the read exclusive transaction. So let's see what happens. Again, the first thing that happens is a read request, this time an upgrade request or a read EX request. So it doesn't really matter how the transaction goes. If it's an upgrade or read EX, the only difference is do I supply data or not. Okay, so suppose this is a read EX request. The home knows that and knows that this is in dirty shared state. Okay, so it's between the current owner and you and the requester to figure out the detail. But as far as I am concerned, that is going to become an exclusive state because the new guy is going to be the owner. So how do we achieve that? We have to tell the current owner to supply data, to forward data, but it's forward data in read exclusive mode, meaning not only do you have to forward data, but you have to invalidate yourself. And remember, we were in dirty shared state, so we will remember, we will have the possibility of having other nodes being sharer of the same data. So we have to invalidate them. So this all happens in step 2. So that's step 2, that's step 2. At the same time, we're making a marker. And in fact, by the time you received the marker 2 from the Q1 channel, all of that is in Q1 channel globally ordered. Okay? By the time you get the channel, you can declare the write has been globally performed. Okay, that's also interesting, but you don't have the data. You have to wait for the data to arrive to you, by which time you actually have the real data. So that's somewhat different design style, okay, from the perspective of let's just use busy states to take care of all these long non-atomic events. So all state changes are instantaneous now. That's actually, I should say, in directory. Okay, this is not necessarily the case for the node side of the processor side. Okay? And because the directory protocol at the directory side is completely instantaneous, you can actually pipeline that better and perhaps reduce the serialization delay, the waiting and all of that. This also gives you some optimization, as we will see a little bit about that later. And you can see for all of the cases that we had, there was no NAC. Okay, they make a big deal out of this in their paper. They argued about the fact that you don't have NAC fundamentally eliminates live lock. Okay, and the deadlock is avoided simply by having these different channels, right? You have Q1, Q2, Q0. Q1 is the reply. Q2 is also kind of a reply, but it's a third-party reply. It's just not being globally ordered. So these are replies, and they will never be blocked. Okay, they are completely drainable, and your request may depend on some transaction to leave, but once they left, so there's no fetch deadlock. That doesn't mean you can get rid of races. There's always race, okay? And this is a race. It's in exclusive state, but you issued upgrade, meaning by the time you issued the upgrade, it was still in shared state from your perspective. So that's a race lost. When you get to the directory, you're lost. Okay, so they call this late request. Okay, so read request arrives at the node. Sorry, late request is a different story. So they do have races, and it's possible this is a different situation. We're in, let's say, exclusive state or dirty shared state, and there's a read. What do? Maybe it's better here. We are going to send you, so we're going to send you, you have a request. We're going to send you to the current owner who can supply the data. Okay, what if this guy wrote back just before receiving? So what if this is 1, this is 2, and 2 prime? Or maybe let's just call it 2, that it's simultaneous. Why not? Because one is going this direction, the other is going that direction. So at a particular cycle, I'm writing back, and you're sending me a responsibility to reply. That's a race. Okay, nobody can root out that possibility, and that's why it's called a late request. The request came too late. Okay, what do? I don't want that. Remember? So their solution was to keep the data. So when you're writing back, when you're doing a write back, you keep the data around a little longer until your write back is acknowledged. That's when you can drop it, because from then on the directory is going to handle this. There are other type of races. So and this is, it's rare, but it also happens. Let's look at this again. Okay, sort of a combination between a lot of things. Let's imagine this case. Again, let's clear this up. So you are the dirty sharer, all right? And then someone else wants to become the new dirty sharer. Fine, this arrives, and we send out all these things. We don't worry about these guys in this case, so let's just worry about this. We tell you the data needs to be supplied to him. That's the third step. But imagine this. Okay, this is used to be dirty shared, and now it needs to go to what? It needs to go to E state. And who's the owner? This guy. Choose a different color. Maybe this. This is the new owner. Okay? And that's what this E is going to remember. E, and that guy is the owner. Now look at what happens in a regular read. So let's give this node some name. This is node 1, N1. This is node N2. Okay? So now we're in a state of E state, and N1 is the owner. And let's imagine the following thing happens. N3 wants to read. Okay? How does this happen? All to the same line. N3 wants to read. We send to the home. Okay, remember what the home state is. It's in E state, and it says, M1 has the, all right. This is, so event 1 is when we're doing a write. Event 2 is here. We're going to supply to tell node 2 to supply the data. But at this point, after event 2, the directory state is already changing from dirty shared to exclusive. And at 10.3, and we're moving this a little bit, so now this is N1. Yet another node, N3 comes in. So event 3 is read. From N3. Okay, and once we have it, look what happens. Home node says, oh, I know. Who's the owner? It's N1 is the owner. So event 4 is going to be the forward request. Right? So this goes here. And now N1 has this following sort of problem. At time T4, and this happens much later. This is event 5. Event 5, which is N2 to N1. Okay? We didn't say that that has to happen at any particular time. It can take for a while. So you see, I got a request, or a forwarded request at time point 4, saying, please give N3 the data, whereas I don't even have the data. Okay, so they call this early request. Happens. Well, there's nothing particularly bad about it. It's not very common. You just have to block the reply until you have the data. Hold on, wait. I don't even have the data. You have to wait. So you see, you have these cases where things are in flight. They're clearly in some transition state. They're clearly not in steady state or in stable state. Okay, they do happen. These races still happen. That you cannot get rid of. It's just the nature of things not being physically happening atomically at the time point. Okay, but still you got rid of all of this transient state issue at the directory side. You pushed some of them into the node side. So it's a design trade-off. The enforcement of order in the pipeline, in the interconnect, does help some situation, but it didn't get rid of some of the races. This races is not always due to out of order delivery. It may simply be you want to send me something, I want to send you something, and there's different outcomes. Maybe my request arrive at your place before yours, before you send me, or the other way around. So races will still happen. So they have a number of optimizations that we already hinted on, the dirty sharing. Okay, so a writer of an exclusive line gets the data from the current owner. So it's a dirty piece of data that is being shared. Okay, in the sort of canonical design, when the dirty data needs to be transferred from one node to another, they always come back to the home node. Ooh, I don't know. If we go back to the kind of state over here, right? So if we need some intervention, they always write back, right? So the home node always get a copy of the data. It's always involved in the loop. This design that we're discussing right now allows dirty sharing, meaning the data is dirty, but it's moved from one node to another, maybe never going back to the directory. It's possible. Okay, the directory doesn't get a copy. The directory only knows who, in theory, is supposed to have a copy. So that's dirty sharing. We can call that an optimization. Right? So they did it that way. The other thing we kind of mentioned already also is when the request is handled by the directory, you get a stamp, you get this, or you get a marker, right? It's done. You can commit it. You can commit it. The global order is determined. You're done. If you're reading a data, I gave you a marker, the read has been completed. No, that's ridiculous. We don't have the data. What do you mean the data, the read is committed? Well, the read can be considered to be globally performed. You can retire it, you can do whatever you want. You don't have the data, so the dependent instruction cannot execute. But if after the read, there is a fence operation, the fence operation can consider this read to have been performed and finished. So and that's what they mention as early commit. Okay, and so there's lots of these examples. Another example is, and let's say you get a request. It's a read of dirty data. The data is dirty at some node. You issue the read request. Okay, what happens? You get a marker right here. You get a marker, that means now you have the data. But let's say someone else think you have a piece of data. So there is an invalidation that arrives. You will also get invalidation from the directory. So which one do you take? Which one you don't? Well, if you get an invalidation before the marker, so I issue a read, and then I got an invalidation. Okay? Imagine that. I issued a read. Before I get any reply from the directory, I got an invalidation message. What does that mean? I can ignore it. Okay? I don't have the data. I clearly don't have the data, I can ignore it. But if I issued a read, the directory gave me a marker. I don't have the data. I was just given a marker. And then before I even get the data, I got an invalidation message. That means I have to invalidate my data. Okay? It's just very confusing. I understand that. So basically, because the directory is being oversimplified, it cannot handle things in transition. It always move from one artificially created stable state to another, and this kind of things do happen, and therefore you have to take care of it. So it's really kind of a design decision. They pushed the transition really to the node side, and you have to worry about all these kind of things. Early commit, well, that's sort of an optimization. Data sharing, late request, and early request. You have to worry about these. Who's handling them? It's the node side. Okay, it's not the directory. So the directory part of the system can get faster, can be pipelined better. Okay, and resulting in the directory side serialization delay.